My name is Charlotte Kensington. I'm 32 years old, and last Thursday night, sitting alone in my living room with a slice of pizza slowly going cold in my hand, I watched my entire relationship unravel. Not with shouting, not with betrayal laid out in some dramatic confrontation, but with something far quieter, something colder. Clarity. It didn't feel like chaos. It felt like confirmation. Ryan Carter, my boyfriend of 4 years, had texted me 5 minutes earlier. Still at the office. This launch is insane tonight. Danielle's making us stay late. Don't wait up. Love you. I remember staring at that message longer than I should have. Not because it sounded strange, but because it didn't. That was the problem. It sounded practiced. Too clean. Too familiar. Like a line he had repeated so many times, it no longer required thought. For the past 2 months, Ryan had been working late, more and more. Always the same tone, always the same explanation. Deadlines, pressure, opportunity. This is my moment, Charlotte, he had told me just a week earlier, his hands warm against mine, his eyes just convincing enough to make me want to believe him. I just need you to trust me. And I did. That's the thing about trust. You don't realize you're giving someone the benefit of the doubt until they start spending it like currency. I took a bite of my pizza, barely tasting it, my eyes drifting back to my phone screen. Something in my chest felt off. Not panic, not even suspicion. Just a quiet discomfort I couldn't quite name. Then my phone buzzed again. A notification. Credit card alert. I almost ignored it. I almost let it sit there, glowing softly at the top of my screen like it didn't matter. But something made me tap it. And the moment I did, my entire body went still. $11,847.23. Charged at something called Sunset Paradise Resort and Spa. My first thought? It had to be a mistake. There was no other explanation. I hadn't used that card all week. I'd been home, working remotely, ordering groceries, cooking dinner like some version of stability I thought I still had. So I opened the banking app, just to confirm, just to reassure myself. And that's when everything started to collapse, because that wasn't the only charge. Not even close. $2,847 at Chrome Nightclub VIP, $1,450 at a designer boutique, $3,200 for something labeled luxury boat rentals. My stomach dropped. $1,800 at Champagne Lounge, $2,550 at Diamond Steakhouse, and dozens of smaller charges scattered between them. Bars, restaurants, Ubers, stores, each one stacking on top of the last, like a slow, deliberate dismantling of everything I thought I understood. Total, $12,156.81. I remember the exact sensation. Not anger. Not yet, just silence. Like my mind refused to process it all at once. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. A message from Ryan. Hey babe, so the guys and I got a little carried away, LOL. I maxed out your card on the trip. You'll get over it. $12,000. We only live once, and I'll only do this kind of trip once. Love you. I read it once, then again, and then a third time, slower, carefully. As if maybe I had misunderstood something, but I hadn't. There it was. Casual, confident, not a hint of apology, not even an attempt to soften it. Just expectation that I would accept it, that I would absorb it, that I would be the kind of woman who laughed it off because love was supposed to mean tolerance. My fingers hovered over the screen. There were 100 different things I could have said. What the hell is wrong with you? Are you serious right now? How could you do this to me? But none of those felt right, because none of them would change what had already happened. So instead, I typed something simple. Hope you had fun. I hit send. And then I set my phone down on the table in front of me, staring at it for a long moment as the weight of what I was about to do settled quietly into place. This wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about something far more dangerous. disrespect, entitlement, the assumption that I would always be there to clean up the mess he made. And for the first time in 4 years, I realized I didn't have to be. I picked up my phone again, dialed the number on the back of my credit card. "Hi," I said calmly when the representative answered. "I need to report my credit card as stolen, and I'd like to dispute all charges from the last 4 days." There was a brief pause on the other end. Then professional efficiency, questions, verification, process. I answered everything smoothly, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "When did you notice the card was missing?" "This morning," I said. "I was looking for it to buy groceries." It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either, because in that moment, it did feel like something had been taken from me. Trust. Respect. The version of my life I thought I was building. "We'll begin a fraud investigation immediately," she said. "There may be follow-up from our fraud department." "Perfect," I replied. And I meant it. When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, the quiet of the room wrapping around me like something unfamiliar. Then, almost as an afterthought, I sent one more message, not to Ryan, but to his sister, Emily. "Hey, just checking. Ryan didn't lose his phone this weekend, did he? I got some strange messages from his number about money that don't sound like him." The response came quickly. Concern. Immediate. Which meant exactly what I needed it to mean. Proof. Documentation. Clarity. I leaned back against the couch, exhaling slowly as I stared up at the ceiling. And for the first time that night, I felt something shift. Not sadness. Not anger. Control. All I had to do now was wait. Ryan came home Monday evening like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't quietly tilted off its axis 3 days earlier. The front door opened with that same familiar sound I used to associate with comfort. Keys dropping into the ceramic bowl by the entryway. Shoes kicked off carelessly, one landing slightly sideways like it always did. And then his voice. "Charlotte, you will not believe this weekend." Bright. Animated, almost glowing. I stayed where I was in the kitchen, leaning lightly against the counter, arms folded loosely across my chest, as I watched him walk in carrying 2 shopping bags. Designer logos. Of course, he looked good. Relaxed. Energized. Still riding whatever high he had been living in for the past 4 days. There wasn't a single trace of hesitation in his expression. Not guilt. Not concern. Nothing. "Hey," he said, stepping closer, leaning in to kiss my cheek like this was just another normal evening. "God, I missed you." I didn't move away, but I didn't lean in either. "Sounds like you had a good time," I said calmly. He laughed, dropping the bags onto the couch like they didn't matter. "Good? Charlotte, it was insane. We upgraded the suite, like last minute, and the view was unreal. And the yacht." He stopped himself, grinning like he had just remembered something exciting. The yacht was probably the best part. The word landed between us. Heavy. Quiet. Yacht. I tilted my head slightly. "A yacht," I repeated. "Yeah," he said easily, completely missing the shift in my tone. "Just for a few hours, nothing crazy. The guys wanted to celebrate properly, you know? Once in a lifetime kind of thing." Once in a lifetime. The same justification he had typed so casually in that message. I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch just enough to become noticeable. "Sounds expensive," he shrugged. "Worth it." There it was again, that assumption, that quiet, unwavering belief that the cost didn't matter, because it wasn't really his to carry. He finally looked at me more closely then, really looked. And I saw the exact moment something in my expression registered, a flicker of confusion. "Wait," he said, stepping closer. "You're not still upset about the card thing, are you?" I held his gaze. "I told you I'd pay you back," he added quickly, "after the wedding, when everything's combined anyway." Combined. The word echoed in my mind. "We never talked about combining finances," I said. He frowned like I just said something unreasonable. "Well, I mean, that's what married couples do, right?" "No," I replied evenly. "That's what some married couples do, after they agree to it." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, a hint of irritation creeping in. Charlotte, come on. It was my trip. It's not like I'm doing this all the time. Was it an emergency? I asked. He blinked. What? The card, I said. I gave it to you for emergencies. His jaw tightened slightly. Seriously? We're doing this? I didn't answer, because we both already knew the answer. Yes, Ryan, I said quietly. We are. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he scoffed lightly, shaking his head. You're really going to make this a big deal? I studied him. The man I had spent 4 years with. The man I had trusted with my time, my space, my future. And suddenly, I saw something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. Not a partner, not an equal, but someone who genuinely believed there would never be consequences. You're right, I said softly. Relief flickered across his face too quickly. It is a big deal. The relief disappeared just as fast. Before he could respond, I turned away, reaching for a glass on the counter like the conversation had already ended. That unsettled him more than anything else. Charlotte, he said, sharper now. I said I'd fix it. What more do you want? I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to ask for. The next morning, I was at work when my phone started vibrating. Once. Twice. Then nonstop. I glanced down at the screen. Ryan. Message after message stacking on top of each other. What the hell? Charlotte, call me. The card got declined. I'm at lunch with my mom and it's not working. This is embarrassing. What did you do? I stared at the messages for a moment, feeling that same calm settle back over me. Then I locked my phone and went back to my meeting. 2 hours later, when I checked again, the tone had changed. Are you serious right now? The bank says the card was reported stolen. Charlotte, pick up the phone. We need to talk. I didn't respond because I knew what was happening next, and I wanted him to experience it fully. The call came that afternoon, not to me, to him. Chase's fraud department. I didn't hear the conversation directly, but I didn't need to, because by the time I got home that evening, I could see the aftermath written all over him. Ryan was pacing the living room when I walked in, his face flushed, his movements sharp, erratic. The moment he saw me, he stopped. You reported me for fraud. There was no greeting, no hesitation, just accusation. I closed the door behind me slowly. I reported my card as stolen, I said. His laugh was short and disbelieving. Oh, that's funny, because the bank seems to think I committed a federal crime. I met his eyes. Did you use a card that wasn't yours? His expression hardened. You gave it to me. For emergencies. His voice rose. I told them that. And what did they say? I asked calmly. He hesitated, just for a second. And in that second, I knew. They said, he started, then stopped, frustration spilling over. They said I'm not an authorized user, because you're not. They said you reported the charges as fraudulent, because they are. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me, like I had suddenly become someone else entirely. You're really doing this, he said quietly. There was something different in his voice now. Not anger. Not yet. Something closer to disbelief. I didn't steal from you, he continued. I used the card you gave me. You chose to spend over $12,000 on things you knew were not emergencies, I replied. That's not stealing, he snapped. It is, I said, when it's not yours. His hands curled into fists at his sides. They said this could follow me, he said, his voice tightening, that it could affect my credit, my job, everything. I held his gaze. You should have thought about that before you used it. Silence. Heavy. Charged. You're going to ruin my life over this? He demanded. I took a slow breath. No, Ryan, I said quietly. You're doing that yourself. That's when the shift happened. The moment where anger finally broke through. You're my girlfriend, he said, like that should mean something. We're getting married in 5 weeks. I tilted my head slightly. Are we? That stopped him. Completely. What does that mean? He asked, his voice dropping. It means, I said carefully, I'm reconsidering marrying someone who thinks taking $12,000 from me is a joke. His face went pale. You can't be serious. I am. You can't just walk away, he said, the first hint of panic slipping into his voice. Everything is already planned, paid for, Invitations sent. I shrugged lightly. Then I guess that's something you'll have to figure out. For a second, he just stared at me, like he was waiting for me to take it back, to soften, to return to the version of myself he understood. But I didn't. And he saw that. You're unbelievable, he said, grabbing his phone. I'm calling my dad. I nodded. Good, I replied. He can explain credit card fraud to you. He flinched. Just slightly, but I saw it. And for the first time since this started, Ryan Carter looked unsure. Ryan's father called me the next morning. I had expected anger, threats, legal language wrapped in intimidation. Instead, his voice was calm, measured. Charlotte, he said, I just want to understand what happened. There was something in the way he said it that made me pause. Not defensive, not accusatory, just tired. So I told him. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just facts. And then I sent him everything. The credit card statements, Ryan's text, word for word, where he laughed about maxing out my card. The message thread from before the trip, where I clearly stated the card was for emergencies only. There was a long silence after he reviewed it, long enough that I pulled the phone away slightly, checking if the call had dropped. Then, Jesus Christ, Ryan. Not anger directed at me, at him. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Charlotte, he said after a moment, his tone heavier now. This is not what he told us. I almost smiled. Of course it wasn't. What did he say? I asked. That you overreacted, his father admitted. That it was a few purchases. That you accused him of something extreme over a misunderstanding. I let that sit between us. Then quietly, it was over $12,000. Another silence. Shorter this time, but sharper. I see that, he said, and something in his voice shifted. Not just understanding, disappointment. Deep, unmistakable disappointment. I'm sorry, he added, and I believed him. But the calm didn't last long, because Ryan wasn't done. Not even close. That afternoon, my phone lit up with a new notification. A group chat. His friends. Stephanie, the one who had apparently helped organize the trip, started it. Charlotte, this is really immature. I stared at the screen for a second before replying. Is it? Yes, she shot back immediately. Making Ryan go through a fraud investigation over a misunderstanding? That's extreme. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. Did you enjoy the yacht? I typed. There was a pause. Then, that's not the point. No, I replied. It is. Another message popped up from someone named Alexis. You're seriously going to ruin his credit over this? I tilted my head slightly, reading it again. He ruined his own credit, I responded, by using a card that wasn't his. Megan jumped in next. He said you were fine with it. There it was. The narrative. The justification. I stared at that message for a moment, then typed carefully. So you all knew he was using my card? Silence. Immediate. Complete. The chat didn't move again after that, because suddenly they understood. Meanwhile, the bank's investigation was moving forward, exactly the way I expected it to. Methodical, precise, unforgiving. A representative called me later that evening. Ms. Kensington, she said, we've completed initial verification with several merchants. I leaned against the counter, listening. Security footage from the designer boutique shows Mr. Carter using the card and signing receipts. Of course it did. The yacht rental agreement was signed under his name, using your card. I closed my eyes briefly, not out of stress, but because it all felt so predictable. And the nightclub confirmed multiple transactions, with him presenting the card directly. There was a brief pause. Based on the evidence and his own admission, we can confirm this as unauthorized use. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. What happens next? I asked. There are two options, she explained. We can proceed with full criminal charges for fraud, or limit this to financial recovery and account flagging. Criminal charges. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Final. I thought about it. About Ryan. About the last 4 years. About who I thought he was, and who he had just shown himself to be. No criminal charges, I said finally. There was a pause. Understood, she replied. We will proceed with full reimbursement and flag the individual responsible in our fraud prevention system. Good, I said, because that was enough. More than enough. By Thursday, the consequences started to hit hard. Ryan tried to use his card again. Declined. He applied for a new one. Denied. Tried to get added to his parents' account. That's when the fraud flag surfaced, and everything started to unravel. His mother called me that evening. Unlike his father, she didn't bother with calm. "How could you do this to him?" she demanded the second I answered. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear, then back again. "He did this to himself," I said. "You've destroyed his future over money." "It wasn't just money. He's your boyfriend." I let out a quiet breath. "Not anymore." That stopped her for exactly half a second. Then, "You're being cruel," she snapped. "You make more than he does. You could have just let it go." I laughed. Actually laughed. A short, sharp sound I didn't recognize as my own. "So because I earn more," I said, "that gives him the right to take from me?" "That's not what I—" "No," I cut in calmly. "That's exactly what you're saying." She went silent. And in that silence, the truth settled, what they had all assumed, that I would absorb it, excuse it, accept it. Because it was easier than confrontation. Because love meant tolerance. Because consequences were optional. "You're ruining his life," she said again, quieter now. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "No," I said, "I'm just not saving it." By Friday, Ryan reached out. Directly. No arrogance, no confidence, just desperation. "Charlotte, please, can you remove the fraud report?" I stared at the message for a long moment. "I can't even get a basic credit card," he continued. "This is following me everywhere." "Yes, that was the point. You're ruining everything," he added. I typed slowly. Carefully. "You ruined it the moment you decided it didn't matter." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then finally. "It was just a trip." I read that sentence once, then locked my phone, because there was nothing left to explain. Nothing. Some people don't understand consequences until they're living inside them. 3 weeks, I was supposed to be walking down an aisle. Instead, I was sitting alone in my apartment, barefoot, wrapped in silence that felt nothing like loss. The wedding would have been this Saturday. Everything had been planned down to the smallest detail. The venue, the flowers, the seating chart Ryan and I had spent hours debating like it mattered. At the time, it had felt like we were building something permanent. Now, it just felt like paperwork. Chase had already completed the process. Every dollar, $12,156.81, refunded. Clean. Final. Undeniable. Financially, I was exactly where I had been before. Emotionally, I was somewhere else entirely. Ryan, on the other hand, was learning what consequences actually meant. Not in theory. In reality. It started small. He tried to rent a new apartment after things between us ended completely. Denied. No cosigner, no approval, with the fraud flag attached to his name. No landlord wanted the risk. Then came the car. 3 dealerships, 3 rejections. Same explanation every time, dressed up in polite language that didn't hide the truth. Unreliable. High risk, not worth it. He tried opening a new bank account, ended up with a second chance account. High fees, restrictions, constant monitoring. Even his job wasn't immune. Pharmaceutical sales required trust, access to company credit cards, expense accounts, responsibility. HR called him in. Not an accusation. Worse, a concern. He was placed under review. Performance monitoring, because suddenly his judgment was a liability. And that's the thing about reputations. They don't collapse all at once. They erode. Quietly. Piece by piece, until one day, there's nothing left to stand on. The wedding fallout was exactly as messy as you'd expect. We had put down about $8,000 in deposits. Joint account, 1 signature required to withdraw. I took my half, $4,000, left his, and sent a single message. Your portion is still there. Good luck getting refunds. He lost it. Completely. 63 texts, 12 voicemails, and one very public scene at my office that ended with security escorting him out while half my floor watched in stunned silence. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't need to. By then, I understood something important. Closure doesn't come from conversations. It comes from decisions. The vendors weren't kind. Non-refundable venue. Catering returned 20%, barely. Photographer kept everything. The suit he bought? Tailored. Unreturnable. Total loss on his side. Roughly $9,000. Maybe more. And still, he didn't stop. A week later, I received an email. Subject line: financial reconciliation proposal. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside, a spreadsheet. Detailed. Organized. Completely detached from reality. 4 years of emotional labor. $50,000. Career sacrifices, $30,000. Emotional distress from the investigation, $25,000. Half my savings, $15,000. Engagement ring, $8,000. Total, $128,000. I stared at the number for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because it told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about money. It never had been. It was about entitlement. The belief that he was owed something, even after everything, even now. He had even asked a lawyer friend to formalize it, which made my response very simple. I forwarded it to my lawyer. The reply came back the next morning. Clear. Precise. Final. My client's former boyfriend appears to be confusing a failed relationship with a legal partnership. He is neither a spouse nor a creditor. He has no claim to any assets. Continued harassment will result in legal action. Additionally, the engagement ring, being a conditional gift, must be returned. The ring arrived the next day. Certified mail. No note. No explanation. Just silence. Even his friends weren't immune to the fallout. Turns out, they had all paid Ryan for their share of the trip, and when the charges were reversed, the money didn't magically reappear, because Ryan had already spent it on himself. Shopping. Extras. Upgrades. The group chat came back to life briefly. Not for me. For him. Arguments. Accusations. Receipts. One of them posted everything online, every transaction, every discrepancy, how Ryan had charged them for premium experiences and pocketed the difference. That was the final fracture. Friendships don't survive that kind of exposure, especially not when money is involved. Word spread, not dramatically, not publicly, but quietly. Professionally, one of those friends worked in the same industry, and suddenly, Ryan's name carried weight, not the good kind. He was still employed, technically, but reputations don't need official statements to shift. They just do. A week ago, I got a message from an unknown number. I'm sorry, Charlotte. I was wrong. I made terrible decisions. I lost everything. Can we talk? I read it once, then again, slower. There it was, the version of him that only appeared when there was nothing left to take. I typed a single response. No. He called. I didn't answer. He called again. Blocked. And just like that, 4 years ended in less than a minute. His father reached out one last time. Not to argue, not to defend, just to apologize. I thought I raised him better, he said quietly. I believed that too. Thank you, I replied, for understanding. There was a pause. Then, for what it's worth, you did the right thing. Maybe I did. Maybe I just did what was necessary. His sister messaged me the next day. I know this is strange, she wrote, but thank you. He's been like this for years. No one ever held him accountable. I stared at that message for a long time, then smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but recognition, because sometimes people don't change until they have no other choice. As for me, I'm okay. more than okay. I kept my money, my credit, my peace, and most importantly, myself. Tomorrow, instead of standing in front of 100 people pretending everything is perfect, I'm boarding a flight to Italy. First class. The hotel reservation was always in my name anyway. Funny how that works. Sometimes the best kind of ending is the one you choose. And if Ryan ever sits somewhere quiet, wondering where everything went wrong, I hope he remembers that moment, that text, that choice. Because $12,000 is a very expensive way to reveal who you really are.